Hey there, what's going on? Found some interesting information dealing with the deep state because I guess I'm inspired from a friend of mine who, he's a perennial, I guess he's a dedicated Democrat type of guy. Now, I'm not really into Democrat, Republican politics, none of that kind of stuff. But it just was curious to me how he was actually, he basically parrots whatever he hears from CNN, MSNBC, the Democratic Party, that type of stuff. We've talked about, this is a longtime friend I've had. We've talked at length about a lot of different things as far as history as well as politics. But I've never really been deep into politics until I actually noticed what was going on in the press in relationship to Donald Trump. But I didn't really come to grips with the depth of it until by by um by chance I ended up actually watching about 45 minutes of uh the Mueller hearings, and that really opened my eyes to what's really going on with this whole political thing, because just from hearing stuff come out, just by just overhearing stuff on the television about this whole Russian collusion thing, I just assumed that it was a done deal, and that the way these people were portraying this was that it was just a slam dunk done deal. Donald Trump is already toast. So I was totally amazed when I actually was paying attention to this Mueller hearing, and it was utterly and completely 100% ridiculous. And this is from a person. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not even really into politics. But that really woke me up, because I was like, well, wait a minute. If all these guys are people are lining up, if this CNN, the MSNBC, all these media sources are against Trump, I was like, he's got to be doing something right, because I know enough about the mainstream media to know that they never support somebody that's actually righteous, trying to do the right thing or anything like that. They're always trying to suppress the truth and to basically cater to this deep state. And that's where you know I came into looking at articles like these. Well, I have all along, but this really stuck out to me, because after all the stuff I talked about my friend about all this different stuff dealing with deep state, and he even he latched onto a lot of stuff that I had. I guess I'm further along this whole conspiracy analysis thing than he is, but evidently he got turned back to the dark side, because he tells me, because we started. I guess we came to a point where we were talking about stuff. So I basically laid out what I saw what was happening with Trump, and then he laid out this whole thing based on, it was the direct opposite of what I was telling him about Trump. Because I was talking about Trump as far as him being a force to basically get rid of the swamp, to stop this deep state, and he was parroting all of these things from this, from like he was had the Democratic playbook. He talked about how everything about Trump was in the Steele dossier, and how Trump was compromised by the Russians. He's working for the Russians. Everything he's doing in the foreign policy is to support Russia, not the United States, and all this kind of stuff. Which but I found that very curious, because him telling me that there's no such thing as the deep state really astounded me, because he's the person he would always talk about the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations in the United States, which it doesn't get much more deep state than that. Which I guess you got the analogous thing, the Royal Institute of International Affairs in Britain, and I just couldn't believe this, and then I'm looking at I never read the Steele dossier because it just sounded like it was stupid to me. And then later on, as I'm researching other stuff, I come to actually find out that it's been totally discredited. And then you find out, as you'll see in some of these articles, that basically the DNC paid for the Steele dossier. And it's crazy. So with all that said, I came across this article, because I'm always doing research. I'm always reading. I'm always curious about stuff. I'm always questioning stuff. And even as far as my friend, I actually looked into the stuff he was saying, about all this stuff about Trump being, corrupted by Russia and all this kind of stuff. So in the course of that, I actually saw the clip from this guy here, this right here, this John McLaughlin. And he actually he thanked God for the deep state. He on camera, he thanked God for the deep state. But from this article, what you come to find out is that this deep state, I think they're trying to change the definition of what deep state really meant. And as far as I can remember, the actual term deep state was actually coined, or if it wasn't coined, it was made popular by William Bonner, the guy who does the financial newsletter, for Agora. They do all these different newsletters, but what about financial newsletters, these people, they have to get to the nitty gritty because they have to have the intelligence in order to give people the correct information to make the proper assumptions and deductions from the news to figure out what's going on in the world so that they can profit from their investments. So even before they had this term, the deep state, sometimes I call them the deep state. Sometimes I call it the cabal. Sometimes I call them the oligarchist, because it's this oligarchies, the small number of people that are controlling what's going on in the world and in the different countries. Although these people, they actually transcend the level of nation. I mean, these people, they use nations the way they use chess pieces on a chessboard. These people, they're not constrained. They're not constrained by nations, and B, they think of nations as just something where they can enact what they're trying to do. And that's another thing that astonished me is how Donald Trump actually called out the deep state right in that UN speech that he gave. So with all that said, this guy here, I mean, he's a ultimate deep stater, and this guy, he was high up in the stuff. It's in this article, which I'll put the link to, below in the description for this video. But it just astounded me how, because right in the article they tell you, like, in America, the deep state justifies itself in the news, quote unquote, news media it owns, and it does so by falsely defining what the deep state is. And what they do is they misdefine it as being, instead, it's this mind control thing or persuasion thing, public relations. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to argue that the deep state is these career government employees who are also known as the civil service, and that it's really the public sector. But that, and that's really not what the deep state is. Those people who are in the government are agents for the deep state. The actual deep state is these people that the power behind the throne, I guess you can call them, the best way to capture what these people actually are. They're the people that actually pull the strings, because you have to understand that the people that pull the strings are intelligent enough to know that they cannot be paraded around in the media and be subject to direct scorn of the population. These people they're sharper than that. These people didn't accumulate billions of dollars by being naive and stupid or ignorant. So that's the way these people operate. They operate through agents. So this article goes into that, and it kind of made me aware of something, because when I think of deep state, I guess it's going to be a difference between the way I define, or people like us that define it in a way where we know who we're talking about. We're talking about the oligarchy. We're talking about, higher level people. Like you might be talking about Rockefellers or the Bill Gates, or people like that, or Bloomberg, or you talking about billionaires. You're talking about people that are not just simply employees. Because all these people in the politics, they're basically just agents for the people with the real money that are behind them. The people that purchase the lobbyists, which is just really a euphemism for the people who pay off people in the government. That's really what it is. I mean, it's no point in just sugarcoating it with these euphemisms that we like to use. So that's one thing that that I think people need to know, is that you just can't believe that that Nancy Pelosi or Adam Schiff or any of these people are really the power behind acting of their own volition. But that goes into the other things. I'm not going to start talking about all the reasons why these people are so rabid about this impeachment stuff, which is important stuff too. But I'm trying to stay on course with just this, because it's so much to cover, and it's just too much to cover in one video. So I'm going to link to this article in the references, but it's just astounding how these people just come out and tell you what's really going on, as far as with this deep state stuff. But the deep state is not just some government employees. It's not just a group of government employees. I guess that's the big takeaway from this. So meanwhile, I also came across this article, which is entitled "The Conspiracy Against Trump," because if you got any type of objectivity about yourself, and I think most people in the country do, although you have a rabid part of staunch Democrats who they just buy everything that comes from the mainstream media, hook, line, and sinker. They just buy it all. But if you stop and think about it, how can you talk about impeaching a guy before he's even in office, or before the impeachment? It was a video on Glenn Beck. It was either Glenn Beck, I think it was Fox News, and they did a video timeline of how ever since Donald Trump was elected president, from that November, every month, probably every day, every month, and he took the clip, and they showed you how every month all these people talked about, they made a point to talk about impeachment. And you know what that is? It's predictive programming, and it's also getting people accustomed to the concept of impeaching the president. Having that idea, even though it wasn't based on anything. You can look at it after all these investigations, and it's not like they were totally after him, looking for any reason to get him. And so what happened is, they keep coming up with all this stuff. Just like I told you earlier, I thought this Mueller thing was going to be the nail in Trump's coffin. The way they portrayed it was that after this Mueller investigation, Trump was going to they was just going to take him directly to jail straight from after this, because it was such, conclusive, damning evidence that these people had. And then you listen to the thing, and the guy could barely answer a question about the so-called report that he put together. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. I mean, this guy. I almost felt sorry for the guy because he was so inept. So back to the story. So what this article here is a little bit of the details about this deep state conspiracy to get rid of Trump, and you can see it because of how biased the mainstream media is on this guy. Not just the news, but television shows. A lot of these people, like people in The View, and they talk so bad about Trump. Never mind all the stuff he's doing to set things straight in the country, with the country, inside the country, as well as with the foreign relations. I mean, it's just totally slanted. And then you get evidence or things that come out about CNN and about how they were so slanted, how the owner of CNN was actually dictating to his staff that the whole purpose of the reporting is not to tell the truth, and it's all to make Trump look bad and to make sure that Trump doesn't get reelected. So going to the article, the guy says the real deplorable in today's United States is the continuation of a foreign policy based on endless aggression to maintain Washington's military dominance in parts of the world where Americans have no conceivable interest. And what we know about this is, if you talk about the first person who actually talked about the military-industrial complex was President Eisenhower on his last speech right before he was about to leave office. And these people, this military-industrial complex, has grown to the point now where they dictate United States foreign policy, and they want to do it because they make their money based on war. So to the person, to the guy who has a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So to these people, they everything they want to do is based on having a war so they can keep making money. Whether or not it's in the interest of the people of the country to actually have all these military bases all over the world. So many voters backed Donald J. Trump because he committed himself to changing all these endless wars. But unfortunately, he's reneged on his promise, instead heightening tensions with major powers in Russia and China, while also threatening Iran and Venezuela on almost a daily basis. Which I think there's a strategy in him doing that, and I think he is working towards that. He may or may not, but these people, they freaked out when he just pulled those few troops they have over there in Syria out. That could be a distraction. It's possible. I haven't had a chance to investigate it enough. And he goes on. This guy, he's not a Trump aficionado, because he says some things about Trump that that aren't that nice, or maybe not. Where you just 100% for Trump. I'm kind of for Trump, but you have to try to be objective about these things, because Trump, I think he's trying to do the right thing. I'm not sure, but it just appears that way because of some of the things he's doing. He's trying to roll back a lot of these bad treaties and things that were made by previous presidents and previous administrations. Things like NAFTA, and that where they basically took all the manufacturing and just exported it all out of the country. And they also passed these laws to incentivize people taking out loans or using debt financing for your corporations instead of using equity financing. And equity financing is where they used to call it retained earnings way back when. I'm probably giving away my age here, but they used to call it retained earnings, which is basically just savings or cash stash. And a lot of times the companies, they would finance their capital investments with their savings instead of going into debt to do it. But now you get tax benefits from using the debt financing more so than your equity finance, or just financing your capital investments with cash. So there's a strategy behind this. They do this stuff for a reason, not just out of nilly-willy. So they talk here about you have the deep state, which also worked with the Democratic Party and President Barack Obama to destroy the Trump presidency even before it began. So then he goes on. You have the varying definitions of the term deep state, from the soft version, which accepts that there's an establishment that has certain self-serving objectives that it works collectively to promote, to something harder, which is an actual infrastructure that meets together and connives to remove individuals and sabotage policies that it objects to. So the deep state in either version includes senior government officials, business leaders, and even more importantly, the managed media, which promotes a corrupted version of good governance, quote unquote, that in turn influences the public. So going on, he says whether the Mueller report is definitive very much depends on the people they chose to interview and the questions they chose to ask, which is something that will no doubt be discussed for the next year, if not longer. Beyond declaring that the Trump team did not collude with Russia, it casts little light on the possible deep state's role in attempting to vilify Trump and his associates. The investigation of that aspect of the 2016 campaign and the possible prosecutions of former senior government officials that might be a consequence of the investigation will likely be entertaining conspiracy theorists well into 2020. But I don't like that term because, first of all, the very nature of a conspiracy is that you're going to have to extrapolate and interpolate and use deductive and inductive reasoning to figure it out, because the conspiracists are never going to come up and just admit to it, because the very nature of a conspiracy is that it's hidden and that the people, the conspirators, do not want to, convict themselves. So the last thing the conspiracy people are going to do, the people conducting conspiracy are going to do, is actually just tell you, oh yeah, we did this, we did that, we did this kind of stuff. So, and a lot of people that do conspiracy analysis, they're fed up because you get obvious propaganda from your mainstream media sources on whatever you talk about the JFK assassination, you talk about the World Trade Center attacks and that whole thing, from all this other stuff going on, and you just can't get the truth out of these people. They're dedicated to representing whatever the deep state people tell them to do, which is never the truth. It's never the truth. There's always some type of agenda these people are supporting. So with all that said, I know I went on a couple of rants here, but this is a pretty good article right here. And they talk here about how Brennan was the key to the operation, and what they're investigating now is this FISA fraud that these people use to get this whole to get the warrants to support this whole idea of Russian collusion, and to put it in the FBI and to make it a big topic. So rightly, President Trump is having this stuff investigated, because this needs to be rooted out. And what the deep state people don't like is that they were the ones that were behind it, and it was all just a facade. It was all just a construct. There was no basis to it. And that's what's coming out now. But it's a whole lot more stuff coming out that was connected to it. And so that's why these people are fighting so hard to impeach President Trump is because they're uncovering all this fraud, all this crap, all this corruption that these people had in China, in Ukraine, and that's so this whole thing with Biden is unraveling way more. It's not even about Joe Biden, and that's what the hardest thing to try to get people that follow the Democratic Party to understand is that this is way, way, way bigger than just Joe Biden. And that's why President Trump is actually investigating it. I mean, let's be real. There's no way Trump was scared of Joe Biden as a so-called political opponent. I mean, give me a break. This guy can barely string together 3 sentences before he's forgetting stuff. But what it is it's like you start pulling one little thread on your piece of clothing, and before you know it, your whole sweater is laying on the ground. It's this, but the Joe Biden thing is just the tip of the iceberg of all the corruption that was being conducted by the Obama administration and the DNC in the Ukraine. So with that, I'm going to go. I already went too far. But with that, I'm just going to leave it here, and we'll cover more of this stuff later on. And make sure you subscribe. Make sure or write me or let me know if you want me to cover anything else. And thanks a lot for watching.